Hey there, friends and enemies. JoPa here again, and today I wanted to talk about the state of video games in 2023 because I've seen some absolutely wild hot takes recently, and they have really got me thinking, such as gaming is dying, 2023 is the worst year for gaming, creativity is dead, live service ruined gaming, etc. And I just wanted to chime in on the discussion because I find it very fascinating. I personally feel like 2023 has been one of the best years we've gotten in recent memory for video games. And I know a lot of those videos, they are hot takes, rage bait videos in order to generate as much attention as possible, generate as much revenue as possible, and really get people angry because that's going to get the focus on you for a long period of time. But in reality, there are some people who genuinely feel like gaming is not what it once was. And I do think that a lot of that is pure nostalgia, but there are some reasons to be excited about the future, excited about the present, and talk about all the great titles that we have out there right now. So for me personally, some of my favorite games this year have been like Remnant 2, Armored Core 6, Final Fantasy 16, Baldur's Gate 3, Sea of Stars, all in very different genres. And I feel like as a variety gamer, there's never been a time where I had so many games coming out back to back to back that have me fully interested in experiencing them completely. I didn't even mention Starfield. We've got Spider-Man 2 coming out, Lies of P, Lords of the Fallen. As a fighting game fan, you've got Street Fighter and Mortal Kombat. As a fan of other RPGs, you've got Octopath Traveler 2 launched earlier this year. I mentioned Sea of Stars, which is such a nostalgic feeling game but has some modern twists. I absolutely love that game. And so there have been so many titles to come out that I have found engaging and interesting and all advancing the genres that they're in. Remnant 2 is the perfect example. It improves upon everything that Remnant 1 did and just made it better. You've got randomized locations, you've got secrets to find, you've got difficult boss fights, different difficulty levels, all of that leading to one of the more underrated games of the year in my personal opinion, and one that I think provides enough value towards the genre to really point a path forward for a lot of other game developers who might not want to do a live service type of game. We saw some games like Outriders in the past struggle with the direction they want to go, having an end game. How do you make it replayable but also do a DLC model? Whereas Remnant 2 provided a lengthier time where people were sticking around with the game, finding the secrets, taking on multiple difficulty levels. I think that's the path forward we'll see outside of looter shooters like Destiny 2, which are really hard to emulate. And some people do say that the live service games are ruining gaming, but there's a lot of people that enjoy live service games. You don't have to play them. That's the crazy part for me, is I think a lot of people feel like they have to play every new title that comes out that seems somewhat interesting to them, but that's not the case whatsoever. I think gaming has entered the mainstream, so we get so many more games than ever before. You look on Steam alone and we get dozens of games every single month from all different types of genres, something for pretty much everybody if you're looking for it. And yet people complain that there's not enough to play out there because they don't want to spend the time looking outside of anything that is not right in front of their face. Whereas you have multiple titles that are potentially bangers, right? You have games earlier in this year like Hi-Fi Rush that came out of nowhere and did something completely unique, creative, and allowed for a lot more innovation than I think people realized. But because it's not one of these big AAA titles, it doesn't get the attention that it maybe deserves. I think Sea of Stars and Remnant 2 fall in that same category. But then you have other games like Tears of the Kingdom and Baldur's Gate 3, which look like the front runners for the game of the year. Both of them really advancing what the genre that they're in does, right? You look at Baldur's Gate 3, never has a game felt like Dungeons and Dragons comes alive better than Baldur's Gate 3. It's got interesting characters, lots of voice acting, lots of different twists in how you handle the gameplay, lots of player choice and player agency, and it just does everything so well. Sure, it might not do anything that is so totally innovative that it creates its own genre essentially, but it does so many things right and advances the genre that it's in forward for sure. And I think that's something that is highly underrated right now, in that this is the type of game that can prompt a lot more copycats. We saw it with Elden Ring last year, whereas that game provided something completely different and unique in the Soulsborne type of genre. Now we're going to see other games following suit and really taking that step in that direction and then adding to it themselves. Same thing with Remnant 2, same thing with Armored Core 6. We've been waiting a long time for an Armored Core game, and we finally got one that is very fun, very difficult, and providing a different challenge than I think anybody might have expected. So I just find that there's so many different options out there that people are underrating the titles that are really doing well this year. Now, not every game is going to be a massive success. Even the ones that are financially and commercially successful, like Diablo 4, have struggled a bit. But even that game, we've seen it in the past with Diablo games. These games last for a long, long time. It's going to have millions of players for a long time, season after season, most likely. And so regardless of whether it is soulless or you feel it's too corporate, a game like that, it still has a mass audience that is enjoying the game consistently. And it's hard to argue against that, right? Same thing with games like Street Fighter and Mortal Kombat 1, whereas these games, you don't know if they're going to necessarily be complete bangers that redefine the genre. But what we do know is they're going to have dedicated player bases who are thankful that there's a new entry into their favorite franchise. And I think that's something that cannot be understated enough, is that some of these games are just meant to be more of what they are for their fan bases. And that's something that we've seen it in the movies, like right with the Transformers movies or the MCU. People get over those types of movies sometimes, but there still is a dedicated fan base who wants to see a new entry of that movie, game, whatever the case may be, as often as possible. They're going to enjoy it. It doesn't matter how innovative that franchise necessarily is. That brings me to the biggest complaints that we see these days. Games are full of microtransactions. They're all live service. They have cut content. They aren't complete right at launch. But meanwhile, since April, we've gotten Star Wars Jedi Survival, Tears of the Kingdom, Final Fantasy 16, Remnant 2. We've gotten Armored Core 6, Baldur's Gate 3, all of these games that do not have microtransactions that can be completed right from the initial playthrough. And I just find it fascinating that all of these games are just overlooked and ignored as if they don't exist, and people are forced to play live service games. It's crazy to me. If you want to play a live service game like a battle royale, like a looter shooter, like an MMO, you're going to have to pay for ongoing content. That's the way it's going to be. If you want more content, if you want to keep playing these games like Diablo 4, like Destiny 2, like Fortnite, you're gonna have to pay some way or another, whether it is microtransaction, whether it is for seasons or something like that. You can argue about if you think some of these studios are greedy or not. I normally don't agree with that. I feel like most of these games are free to play, and so most players are not spending a lot of money on these games, and so they have to make up for it by making that money somewhere to continue the development, keep the servers active, keep content coming within the game, whether it's PvE content, PvP content, all of that kind of good stuff. And it's just crazy to me that no one is twisting anyone's arm and telling them that they have to play live service games. But if you enjoy live service games, there are options out there. And I think that's the thing that's crazy to me, is there's something for everybody these days, whether you want to play a shooter, whether you want to play an RPG, anything like that. And yet people will still harp on all the games that they don't have to play. There's no obligation to play some of these games that are out there that you don't like the model of. Right? None of these games are tricking anybody into saying that this isn't the model that they're running. We knew the model of Diablo 4 when it first launched. Destiny 2 announces changes to their models well in advance, right? Same thing with battle royales. We know what the model is going to look like, what the monetization is going to look like, all of that kind of good stuff. And yet people will just continue to complain like they have to play those games. Instead, there are all these other fully complete games they can jump into at any time that they want to. But they'll ignore those and say every game is just chock full of microtransactions. Make it make sense to me, because I just cannot agree whatsoever with those takes. I feel like, yes, there are games with microtransactions that are live service, but there's also a lot of players who are looking to play those types of games, and that's just what the games are going to involve if you want to play those types of games, right? If you want to have continuous ongoing content, that's what's going to happen. So I don't know. I know that was a bit of a tangent there, but overall, I just feel like this year has been phenomenal for video games. There's so many great options, and I genuinely feel like if you are not enjoying video games right now, then either you're burnt out, you're not trying out different games enough, like trying out a variety of games and genres and everything, or video gaming might not be for you anymore, and that's okay. I think there's a certain point where just hobbies don't hit the same as they used to, and people can't accept that. And so overall, I think video gaming is in a great spot. I am so excited about not only the rest of this year, but also looking forward to 2024. There's so many potential great games out there as well that I can't wait to get hands on and experience these new worlds, these new adventures, and all that kind of good stuff. I would love to hear from you guys. What do you guys think about the state of gaming in 2023? Not only that, but what games are you most looking forward to that are coming out in the near future? If you enjoyed the video, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel. Helps me out tremendously. Shows you want to see more content like this in the future, more video essay types. Anyway, my name is JoPa. I hope you have a good one. I'll catch you all later.